Hi, I'm Carrie, stroke survivor and Bind member.
And I'm Kezia, a stroke survivor as well and a member of Bind. And today we are so excited to be welcoming Dr. Katrina Belen, who's a licensed psychologist and is specialized in neuropsychology and so important as one of very few Spanish speakers in the state of Texas. Not only does she do that, but she's also has a great green thumb. And the mommy of Tully, who is one of the besties of Bind members. Yes. So welcome so much. We're so happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Welcome.
Okay.
Welcome to Bindwaves, the official podcast of the Brain Injury Network of Dallas. I'm Brian White, Bind's Executive Director. On each episode, we'll be providing insight into the brain injury community. We'll be talking to members and professionals regarding their stories and the important role of Bind's Clubhouse. We work as a team to inspire hope, community, and a sense of purpose to survivors, caregivers, and the public. Thank you for tuning into Bindwaves. Let's get on with the show.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here. So just as a little update and like a little welcome, so can you tell us a little bit about you and what you do and how you're so connected to Bind?
Well, I'm, like you said, I'm a neuropsychologist, and I don't remember, Jim connected me with Bind years and years ago. He came to one of my support groups, and it was just when Bind was starting off, and he told me all about it, and the energy was so amazing, I had to check it out. So I started sending people to Bind and recommending people volunteer, and I thought I should probably follow my own advice. So I tried to weasel myself in and got to work with some Spanish speakers here at Bind, and office opened up down the way, so I moved into there, and now I get to be right next to Bind, and so we have a pretty close relationship these days.
Yeah, and bring little Tully over to get to see her. So
yeah, bring little puppy over for a little love.
All the puppy lovers here at Bind. So I guess the big question also, just to start off with, is what is a neuropsychologist? I mean, for a lot of our listeners, maybe they don't know. Even as brain injuries, we know we've talked to y'all, but do we really know?
Yeah, and a lot of people get it confused with things like psychiatry or neurology. And a neuropsychologist is a clinical psychologist, which is not a psychiatrist in the sense that we don't prescribe medications. Is the big difference there. But neuropsychology is a subspecialty of psychology. And we study more of the brain and brain behavior relationships. So our training is more related to, understanding traumatic brain injury and stroke and multiple sclerosis, all of those kind of disorders that can affect the way the brain functions, and then trying to help people through those moments and figure out what we can do to make things better, hopefully. We also do a lot of dementia evals and kind of helping people plan for the future as related to that, and again, trying to just make it the best we can for people.
I know that, again, all of our members and subscribers really are wondering and trying to figure out what it all is. And one of their questions was actually like, how long did it take you to do this work? Like, what kind of education did it take, and what kind of training did it take? Because it just seems so like it's like a lot of work for us, as like Carrie said, our brain injury survivors to even understand.
Yeah, it takes a while. So I have a doctoral degree in psychology first, and that's generally you have your bachelor's degree, right? And then you get a master's, which is 2 years of more education, right. And then you'll get the doctoral degree. So in total, it's 5 to 6 years on top of that bachelor's degree.
Oh, okay.
And that's just the educational classroom kind of aspect of it. We do some internship training during that time, but then we have to do a 1-year internship after we finish all of our classwork, essentially. And then after that, we have a 2-year postdoctoral residency. So it's 3 years of supervised training until you get your actual license. Well, you can have your license after the first year, but to be a neuropsychologist, you really need the 2 years of postdoctoral specialized training. So for me, I got to do my training at Jackson Memorial Hospital in Miami, and we worked with neuro rehab and spinal cord rehab, and we worked in the acute stroke units and the trauma center and things like that. And learned all about everything that could possibly happen to one's brain.
There's a lot. So I know, and you kind of mentioned on it, I guess one of our questions, one of the members had, they were like, are there additional fields or areas of specialty under neuropsychology?
There actually are. It seems like that should be enough stopping at neuropsychology,
right.
But neuropsychologists, some only do research or primarily do research. Some are more clinically based, like myself. I prefer to work more with people and face-to-face, kind of helping people. Some people take more of the assessment aspect, doing evaluations, and others do more of psychotherapy and rehab, treatment aspects. And then what else? There was one more I'm blanking on, but yeah, there's lots of subspecialties essentially of the forensic realm too. So some neuropsychologists will just work in the legal realm in terms of help documenting brain injuries for civil cases or even for criminal cases, documenting if somebody has a brain injury or some neurological impairment that might explain why they did what they did.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And right now, I think what you were just saying, like, connects to a lot of wondering what all of this is, right? So a lot of people kind of consider like neuropsychology, like, oh, I have my counselor or my therapist, and don't really understand like where does that fit in? Like, where does the neuropsychologist fit into this idea after going through recovery? So it's like a lot of questions, actually. I was like pretty surprised as to like what were people wondering. So what is the difference between the 3 different careers that are there after recovery or during recovery? Yeah, of like psychology and therapists and counselors and your career. Like, it's a lot of things that we get.
Yeah, generally, when you're getting counseling, it can be provided by a master's level clinician, and oftentimes they're the better counselors. Neuropsychologists often we are focused on the assessment and numbers and documenting, and we write these big long reports. Not to say many neuropsychologists are also very good, psychotherapists, clinicians, but a lot of times master's level counselors have really great training also in being able to provide therapy and kind of help with establishing like cognitive rehab strategies, right? So sometimes that counselor works with you independently to find out, what's really going on and what strategies might actually work for you, or what haven't you thought of yet, or how can we, find the motivation to go ask somebody or get over the embarrassment of having to do this. So counseling is a really important aspect of recovery, I think, just for everybody if they have the opportunity to have that. Again, specialized help, right? You get that extra person that's on your side, a set of eyes to help you out. That's objective. It's not your family telling you. It's hard to hear it from your family all the time, but, an objective person says it, maybe it's something to consider, right?
That third party.
So I think it's really helpful to have that in general, whether you have a brain injury or not. I think we all need that at some point or can benefit from it. As far as neuropsychology, again, some neuropsychologists are great clinicians and wonderful psychotherapists. It just depends on kind of where their energy is and where their focus and training is. Generally, in larger facilities, neuropsychology will focus more on assessment or guiding and working with the team. So when I worked with Rehab Without Walls, for example, one of the things we did was kind of work with the entire team and the family and the clients to kind of put it all together, essentially. So I always felt like we were kind of the glue helping, OT and PT understand, well, why isn't this person doing what we're asking them to do? There's a lot of reasons it's not working, and it's complex for everybody.
Right.
Anything can be going on. And sometimes it's hard to understand that, maybe it's not that somebody isn't motivated, but their brain just doesn't start. And so we kind of help the team understand, like, okay, this is more of an initiation problem. So what kinds of things can we do to help that, and not just blame the person for having bad motivation or things like that.
Or just not paying attention, maybe.
Right. Or sometimes, the team or the family might say, oh, they're so depressed. They seem so depressed. And, that might look depressed, but sometimes after a brain injury, our face just doesn't make the same, emotions it used to. It doesn't do it as much, or sometimes the emotions on our face don't match what's inside. And so it takes time to tease that apart and kind of help everybody understand, maybe this person isn't depressed, or maybe they are. But yeah, sometimes it's really hard to gauge our own, how we're doing from the outside in.
Well, and I guess that kind of leads me to my next question is, so does everyone that had a brain injury need neuropsych testing? When do you decide that you need the neuropsychologist? When does that happen? Is it immediate, like everyone's going to see one? Or someone says, I think this person needs to see that? How does that happen? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Kind of.
From my perspective, obviously, I'm a neuropsychologist. I'm going to promote our services. But I think genuinely everybody who's had any kind of neurological injury would benefit from having a neuropsych eval, because, a lot of times we just don't understand the full extent of what happened and how it might be impacting us. And when we can tease it apart and make it a little easier to chew, kind of, right? So sometimes we go to rehab and we're working on everything.
Right.
But when we can really say, okay, well, this is the thing I need to fine tune. I keep running into that. But, like if we just need to work on this one little thing, maybe there's a lot of really great abilities and skills that are still good, right? Haven't changed. Your brain, you have a brain injury, it's just one part of your brain. It's not your whole brain. And so being able to say, these things are all really good still. Like I'm still in the high average range on this, and this. It's just this area that I can really focus on now. Or how can I use these really great skills that I still have to overcome or to compensate for this one little area that is affected? And I think after an injury, it's hard to know what's the specific area and how can we hone in on that. It's complex. The brain does a whole lot of things, and one part of the chain is broken, and it feels like everything's broken, right? So, for example, if you're not paying attention, sometimes it feels like you have really bad memory, but no, it's your attention, and bad attention means probably bad memory's not going to be so great. But we can recover that if we can improve attention, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe memory's actually really bad. Well, then we need different kind of strategies. But it's important to know why is memory bad, and that guides our strategies better. The other thing is being able to track over time. So sometimes we get frustrated and feel like we're not moving forward and not making progress. It feels slow. And sometimes it's helpful to look at that number and say, oh my gosh, that number's actually boosted up quite a bit. Like I'm actually a lot better than I was last year. It doesn't feel like it day to day, but being able to have that evidence and to see that and say, oh, okay, actually this is getting better. And alternatively, if things are getting worse and you're not sure, a lot of times women going through menopause, right? We're like, oh no, I have dementia.
But it's not that.
But we can look at that and say, no, actually you don't have dementia, right? No, things aren't getting worse for you. It's just maybe it's another factor contributing. Actually, you're having a little more depression or more anxiety, or, we can again tease that apart, and it's kind of reassuring to know, oh, okay, maybe I'm not getting worse. Maybe I am the same.
Yeah, and I think everything that you've been saying right now, like you explaining yourself as like the glue and like putting everything together and being able to explain like, okay, this is the key spot that we can do to improve, that totally makes sense. I think like for all the listeners to continue listening to this and pressing a like and following us, because these are really good, important information that we can hear on the podcast. So follow us every Thursday. A new episode gets updated, and you can continue hearing from all of our guests, and today is a great guest. So what you were just saying totally like reminds me of when I was in recovery, and like when I was an inpatient, because the neuropsychologist was actually the person that helped my friends, my family, and me. And I didn't realize that they worked with my physical therapist, my occupational therapist, and everyone, and kind of, like you said, glued it all together for and I think I'm so thankful for that one person. I wish I knew his name, but it helped my friends and my parents to know that they had to give me patience, that the issue wasn't that I wasn't going to walk anymore. It wasn't that I wasn't going to be able to talk anymore. It was more like, you need to give her time to figure it out. Like she'll do it. She'll be fine, but she needs the time you cannot give her the word. Like, you have to give her time. And I think that was so helpful and so key. Like you said, it's a key solution. Like, not a perfect solution, but a solution that can be served by others.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and families don't know, right? It's like, how many people go through brain injury? It's not common enough that, you know, we can ask our neighbor, or, you know, we've been through it before. It's something new to everybody most often, and it's confusing. There's a lot going on.
And it was very confusing. When I took the test, it was the worst, I think, like 3 days of my life. Even till this day, a little traumatic. Yeah. But for me to explain it to other people was really hard. So can you explain to us, like, what is a testing? You know, I think we've talked about it over and over again, but what is a testing? What was those 3 days of my terrible life like?
Yeah, neuropsych testing sounds pretty awful. Oftentimes they say it's the horrible 4 to 6 hour test. Yeah. We try and make it not that horrible. You know, some people actually do leave and say, that was actually kind of fun. I felt like I was kind of back in school a little.
Yeah, I don't remember hating it. Yeah. I don't really remember it either, so obviously I didn't hate it if I don't really remember it, right?
Not that relevant, right? Not that difficult. But yeah, basically with the testing, what we're trying to do is it's more of a functional MRI of your brain. So we're looking at what your brain actually does as opposed to what it looks like. So sometimes brains look one way, but they act a whole different way. Some people are, you know, have, since they're born, they have different brains, and they develop just the same as everybody else, right? And so an MRI wouldn't contribute much to understanding how their brain is working. And so what we do is use a series of tests to understand from step 1 to step 20 what your brain is doing. So we look at your perception in terms of, are you seeing things accurately? Are you hearing things accurately? And then, are you able to pay attention to things visually, or things that you hear, or things you touch? Are you processing it correctly? Are you processing it quickly, or are you processing it slowly? And then, you know, do you get it into your memory? Once it's in your memory, does it stay there, or does it kind of rot away, right? Sometimes the memory just doesn't stick. Right. But sometimes it's in there and we just can't get it out of our head. And so our testing also looks at, can we help you get the memory out of your head? Is the memory in there, but you can't access it? And so we have different tests to help us kind of find out which ways might be more helpful to access the memory, right? So sometimes we might not remember it, but if somebody says, well, was it this or was it this? Oh, it was that. It's so easy to remember. But when we have to say the word, maybe we can't convey our memory by using words or specific words even. Yeah. Or vice versa, it might be a visual issue. So we look at, auditory memory, visual memory, all the aspects of memory and retrieval of information. And then we look at the most complex things our brain does, like planning and organization and shifting from one task to another, right? Sometimes we can do one task really well, but if something interrupts us or we get thrown off, we can't come back to it so easily. So kind of that ability to multitask or alternate between different things, impulse control, we look at all of that. We also look at motor abilities. We have little tasks that you have to, put pins into holes and all that kind of stuff. And then we have all of our mood measures. So we also are looking at, are you depressed? Are you anxious? Or, how much so? And what's relevant there in terms of, helping your brain operate at its maximal level, right?
Sure. And it sounds like it's not like a one time and done kind of thing. It seems like you wouldn't want to test immediately because your brain has to get a little bit of recovery before you can figure out what's going on.
Yes.
But then it sounds like, too, retesting later after maybe a year or 2 years is a good idea.
It depends on what your goals are, right? So a lot of times in rehab, they do just short tests just to make sure you're moving forward, not moving backwards, that things are working. And then as we continue to get better, right, if you're looking at going back to school, well, then testing would be really important because maybe you need some accommodations or maybe you could get some extra help through the disability services. Yeah. So neuropsych testing can help document what kinds of accommodations would be helpful. Do you need more time? Do you need a note taker? All of these things that really legally you have a right to in order to be successful in school or even going back to work. We can help inform decisions about going back to driving. We don't do driving tests, but we can say, yeah, they can pay attention really well. Their visual systems seem to be working. They're not having issues with problem solving or attention, and so it looks like maybe a good candidate for going back to driving. And then we'll recommend maybe a return to driving evaluation. But generally, the testing is really helpful if you're transitioning into something new and want to make sure you're ready for that, or again, want to try and document and get some kind of accommodations.
Yeah, and I think that like everything that you've talked about right now is kind of like a lot of the things that people are wondering, like how does this happen, and when do you do it, and then how is it measured, and like how do you know you're getting better? And I think that you talked about it a lot, like you can get another testing and then see what your next goals can be, and if you can reach them, and like what are the next steps for you. So I think that was awesome to kind of learn about it. I think like a lot of things that we are also wondering, and of course I am, because I love like numbers and knowing like how is it going and stuff. Like throughout like all of your experience and within your career, do you have like amazing brain injury survivors and your story of success, and how seeing them from one point to the other? And I know that I think we had talked about it before, how like normally neuropsychologists don't get that experience of seeing the before and after completely. But I know that you've been having great people.
That's the super fun part about being a part of Bind, is that I get to keep seeing people when they're not in the hospital and not in crises and not, that first month into injury. It is really traumatic for everybody, right? So that first, month, 6 months, first year even it's a lot. And it's scary, and things change quickly. So it is super cool to see people here at Bind, 5 years, 10 years later, and getting to see how amazing the brain is, because the brain always gets better, right? The brain knows how to heal. And as long as you keep being around people and keep doing things and keep active and, have that way of continuing to use your brain, it gets better, and it's just amazing to get to see what people do with their new brains, right? Because it's really just a new brain, and I love seeing, like Jim, fostering kids, and how he just came to love his new life. It is so, it's such a blessing to get to be a part of all of that. Yeah.
It is. The more you work it, the better it gets. So.
It is, yeah.
And I think that's true for everyone, whether you're had a brain injury or not. Absolutely. You need to work your brain, keep working your brain.
Absolutely.
It keeps us going.
Yeah, it does. And I think also what you had just mentioned can be clicked really, really well with like the community and the purpose of like how Bind is and how we work together and we help each other out. And that's like just like a big example of how creating a community and importance of one another really helps.
Yeah, it's really important. I see, it seems like the people who are going to Bind and a part of this community, again, they just shine. It's unfortunate we can't have Binds everywhere, right? There's so many rural places we don't get to access, but there is a big difference. You see people that don't have a Bind and who are at home, and family leaves all day to go to work, and what do you do? So they have to work a whole lot harder to find something to keep themselves busy all day. That's true. Accessing Zoom, again, it's just a lot more effort to keep your brain active and keeping people, right? You need that community also. So Bind, really is, I think, a good resource for being able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And I know we asked a lot of questions about like what this whole thing is. I get it. But do you have like a specific tip or just information that you want to make sure that all of our followers receive that information and get it? Like it could be anything.
Oh my goodness, I was not prepared for that question. I think the biggest tip I can give is like know that your brain is a muscle, and as long as you work it out, it will work for you, right? Like your brain is not stuck, and it's not, even if you have a brain injury, like I said, it's just a part of your brain. There's still a lot of your brain that's working. So use that part of your brain and continue to exercise your brain, because it will continue to get better. It will continue to work for you as long as you exercise it, right?
Yeah.
If we sit on the sofa and eat
Right.
brownies all day, our belly's going to get big. Well, our brain will get small.
The brain will get small.
Right. And none of us want that. And,
No.
you know, that applies to everybody. You know, we've even seen studies that people who are bilingual, they can postpone the symptoms of diseases like Alzheimer's dementia by 5 years just
Oh, wow.
because they've built so much additional muscle in their brain that they can sacrifice more.
That's very
There's
cool.
more to lose before you notice it. So same thing with brain injury. You just want to have so much brain there that you won't notice it if you lose a little.
Right.
Right? But that applies to all of us. I think
Yes.
all of us can do that.
Oh, thanks. I love it. I loved it. The brain is a muscle. Keep working out.
Yeah,
Very
don't
simple.
stop.
Keep working out. Okay. Well, thank you so much
Oh, yes.
for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.
It's kind of a scary topic, but I think you make it make sense, which is
Yes.
good. That was the point.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And we really hope to see you again to learn even more, because I know this is like, you had a long process to become a neurosurgeon. So then you got it. But thank you for joining us, Dr. Belen. And thank to all of the listeners that are sticking to us every Thursday. And if you have more information and you would like to learn more from other professionals, other stories, make sure to contact us at our email, which is bindwaves@thebind.org.
And before you go, don't forget to hit that like button, share button, notify if you're on YouTube, and go ahead and share it with all your friends and tell everyone about Bind and all the great information you can learn from us. Keep coming back. We'll see you next time on Bind Waves.
Until next time.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Bind Waves and continue to support Bind and our nonprofit mission.
We support brain injury survivors as they reconnect into the life, the community, and their workplace.
And we couldn't do that without great listeners like you. We appreciate each and every one of you. Continue watching. Until next time.
Until next time.